we're going to carry on. We're going to do functions this evening because functions is such a huge part of the paper. So let's get cracking. Okay, so I've put the question up. Some of it's a little bit faint, so just let me know if you can't see it. I did try and highlight it a bit with a different color. But we've got the graph defined by f of x is ax squared plus b with the x-intercept at -3 and at 3. A is 2 and -5, and B are points that lie on f of x. C is a point on g of x, and there's the equation of g of x with 0 and 3 as the y-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to immediately transfer that into my picture. So that's why it's important that you read everything so that you can make sure that whatever's written down is also reflected on your graph or on your diagram, so your brain doesn't have to try and remember it, but can just look at the diagram. Okay, this is -5, and then this is going to be I think that is 6, 7, 8, 9, -9. Okay. Okay, so this is drawn to scale, which is very nice, but you won't necessarily get that when you do your paper. Okay. So we need to find, for the first question, the value of B and Q, and that is going to be for 8 marks. Nice if you can get it right. So that's for B and for Q. Okay. I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds, for about 30 seconds, and then if you have read the question, put your glasses face in the chat so that I know you've read the question, you've understood it, you know what's going on, and that you are ready to start solving it. So put your emoji face in the chat when you've read it. Okay, Moheen's done reading. Come, everyone else. Moheenze, Kamugelo. Waiting for a few more people. Okay, so now that we've done all of that, I want you to start by solving for B. We'll go one question at a time. What is B equal to? Put it in the chat. I know it says 8 marks, but it's actually really easy how to solve for B. Put it in the chat if you know. We are solving for B. Well, we stumped with B because it's really not difficult at all. You should just be writing down a number. We're taking quite some time to solve for B. If you don't know what to do, ask a question, guys. There, Miss Kat's helped now. If you don't know what to do, then ask a question. If you're not sure what B stands for, then ask. Miss Kat has now said B is the y-intercept of F. And what is the y-intercept of F? That we can read off the graph. Yes, Kamukhelo, it's -9. It is -9. It's this point here. Let me put a big green bubble around it. Hopefully the rest of the class can see it. B is -9. B is the y-intercept. Here's our f of x. It says that f of x is equal to ax squared plus b. So then b is -9. Okay, now we need to go on. The next part of the question is to solve for q. Okay, do we know how to solve for q? Q is with g of x. G of x is equal to 3 to the x plus q. What does q stand for? Put it in the chat. What does it represent? Maybe I should go one step back and just ask, what kind of a graph is this? What kind of a graph is g of x? Let's think again. Where's my x? My x is in the exponent. So what kind of a graph is this? It's not a hyperbola. If it was a hyperbola, it would be in the fraction. Yeah. Okay, so hyperbola, x is in the fraction. Parabola, f of x is a parabola because of the x squared. So this one here is a parabola. But g of x has the x in the exponent, which makes it an exponential graph. Okay, straight line has the x, if it's y equals mx plus c, so you just have an x being multiplied by a number, that makes it a straight line. Yes, my Yenzi, f of x is a parabola and g of x is exponential. And a hyperbola has x in the fraction. So you have to look where the x is to know which graph it is. So you tell from the equation what kind of a graph it is and from where your x is. And also by looking at the actual graph, which were drawn here, guys. So by looking at the graph of f of x, which is this one here, this is f of x. It's the parabola. Oh, there it is. It's indicated over there. And there's g of x. So you can tell from its shape that it's increasing. So it is most definitely an exponential graph. Okay, so next question to see how well you guys understand this. Does f of x or a parabola, does a parabola have an asymptote? Look at your graph of the parabola, this one here. I see only two no's. I want to know what everyone thinks. Is there an asymptote for the parabola? How many people are here this evening? Yeah. So the parabola does not have an asymptote, but it does have a y-intercept, which is indicated by B, like we saw in the first part of the question. Okay. So let's go on. It says here in the question that C is a point and that g of x equal to 3 to the x plus q with 0 and 3 as the y-intercept. Now, how are we going to figure out what the asymptote is? Which value in this equation represents the asymptote? Which variable represents the asymptote for g of x? There's no a in g of x. Check again. In g of x, we have 3 to the x plus q. So which one of those will be your asymptote? Let's get some more answers, everyone. Haven't heard from Anamika this evening. Lutando, Siabunga, Mitchell. Post your answers in the chat. Oh, there's Mitchell with his Q. There we go. Right, yes. So the Q is going to represent the asymptote. Now, how are we going to figure out what that asymptote is? What have we got? We've got g of x is 3 to the x plus q. We've got the point where the graph goes through the y-axis, which is 3. So how can we figure out what q is? Make a suggestion in the chat. What do you think? How will we find what q is? Okay, so if you don't know what to do, then substitute. Okay. Always with graphs, when in doubt, sub it out. There we go, my Mayenzi. When in doubt, sub it out. So I have an unknown, which is a q. I have a point, which is 0 and 3. That point can always be substituted to find unknown values. So my y is going to be 3, and my x is going to be 0. I substitute it in because I'm subbing in 0 and 3 plus q. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. And then we take the 1 to the other side so we can solve for q and get q by itself. So that's going to be 2. So q is indeed 2. So the asymptote is at y equal to 2. So my equation, my final equation for the exponential graph is y is 3 to the x plus 2, or g of x plus 2. Okay. Please put a thumbs up in the chat if you understand how to find these equations of the parabola and the exponential. And if you are having difficulty, please ask a question. Okay. Right, let's carry on. Determine the distance between point B and point C. So let's go to point B, which is on the exponential graph. So that's on the exponential, and point C, which is on the parabola. How will we determine the distance between point B and point C? Does anyone have any ideas? Remember that this point here is -1. Yeah, we can do distance formula, but we will need the coordinates first. And how will we find the coordinates, Mayenzi, or anyone else? How will we find those coordinates? What are the coordinates at B and what are the coordinates at C? Remember what I just said, if you, when in doubt, sub it out. What can we substitute in? We substitute in what we have. What we have is that x coordinate, very handy that we've got that x coordinate at -1. Nice, Moeen. Okay, so let's take the -1 and substitute it into the equation of the exponential graph, because by doing that, we'll get the y coordinate at point B. And then we'll do the same for C, but we'll substitute it into the parabola. However, slight problem here, we do not have the full equation for the parabola. So we might need to actually start there first and do that. Okay, so I'm just going to write stuff here so we don't have to keep scrolling. So we have so far for the parabola, y is ax squared plus -9. Thanks, Miss Cat. -9, and our exponential is 3 to the x plus 2. It also says that the graph of the parabola goes through this point a, 2, and -5. And that's what we're going to use first to solve for the a in the parabola equation. So again, what do? We've got a point, we can sub it in. If I have a point, sub it in to solve for one of the unknowns in the equation. So y is -5, and then my x is 2 squared -9. So take the -9 over to the other side, I get a 4, and then this is 4a, and then a is equal to 1. Okay, so for the equation is y is 1x squared -9. We don't need to write that 1. And now I'm going to take my x coordinate. If x is equal to -1, and we're going to find what the y coordinate is at B. So we're going to start off by substituting that into the exponential equation, so that, because point B actually lies on the exponential equation. Substitute in -1, 3 to the -1 plus 2. So that is actually, you can just work that out on your calculator. But it's 1/3 plus 2. And then y is going to be 2 1/3. You can do it manually this way, or you can actually just do it on your calculator. Okay, so B is then in fact -1 and 2 1/3. Let's do A, and we're going to sub in x equal to -1 into the parabola. So then y is equal to -1, and then y is -1 squared -9, and that gives me 1 -9, and then y is -8. So for point A, we've got -1 and -8. Now, the vertical distance between those 2 points is the distance between the 2 y coordinates. So if I look at 2 1/3 and -8, then the vertical distance between that, you can just add that together. You don't have to, because it's a distance, you can ignore the signs. So that's going to be, so the distance between AB is going to be 10 1/3. Okay. Right. Let's go on to the question 5.3. Write down the coordinates of the turning point of f of x. Turning point's fairly straightforward. It's the same place where we have the y coordinate or the y-intercept, and our x there is 0 and our y is -9. And so that's going to be the turning point. And then write down the equation of the asymptote of g of x. So the asymptote of g of x, we've done that already. We've said that it's q is +2. So the equation of the asymptote is going to be y is equal to 2. Okay, that's right, my Yenzi. That's for question 5.3. And then the equation of the asymptote of g of x is y equal to 2. Just remember, if you are asked for an equation, you must give an equation. If you are asked for coordinates, you need to give coordinates. Okay. Right. Let's go on to our next question. Just going to make it a bit smaller so it fits in the screen. On your side, you can definitely zoom in. Okay, so the diagram below illustrates 2 functions. H of x is -4/x - 1, and g of x is equal to -2x + 5. Okay, pop in the chat for 6.1. Write down the asymptotes of h of x. Now remember, it's asymptotes. And that's because it's got an x asymptote and a y asymptote. So pop it in the chat. What are the asymptotes of h of x? Remember, we've got to give equations or write down the asymptotes. Those are not coordinate points. They are just equations. They're lines, remember? So that's what you must give when you, and there's 2. There's a vertical asymptote and a horizontal asymptote. So x equal to 0 is right, but there's another one. When you almost got it, you just need to put it in the right format. Okay, Kamugelo says y is equal to -1. And Boitumelo says x is 0 and y is -1. Perfect. Well done, you guys. So x is equal to 0 and y is equal to -1. Okay, write down the gradient of k of x. Also, one more question, a quick one. What is the gradient of k of x? K of x is here, it's the straight line. Pop it in the chat. What is the gradient of k of x? Well done, Kamugelo and Boitumelo and Mitchell. That's right. M is equal to -2. Good stuff. Now, for which values of x will k of x be smaller than 0? So k of x is our straight line. So for which values of x will k of x be smaller than 0? So if we look at our graph here, our k of x, let's first determine what this point here is. It's an important point. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to say 6.3.1, and let's determine the x-intercept by making y equal to 0. And then x is 5/2. So this point here is 5/2 on the x-axis. You can almost make it out because it's also drawn to scale, but it's very faint, so we might as well work it out. So if I look at my graph and where the x-axis is, there it is going to be smaller than 0, and here it is bigger than 0. When it is smaller than 0, it is below the x-axis, and when it is greater than 0, it is above the x-axis. And that is just because the positive y values sit above the x-axis, and the negative y values sit below the x-axis. So k of x will be smaller than 0 for all values where x is greater than 5/2. Maybe I should just write that a bit closer. 5/2. And let's see 6.3.2. Where is h of x greater than 0? So h of x is the hyperbola. Where will that be greater than 0? So you can basically go through the same exercise I just went through, and I'm going to give you let's do 1 minute. See if you can get an answer for 6.3.2. Just go through that same thinking I did. You can use colors as well if you've quickly redrawn the graph there where you are, and then you look for where the graph is greater than 0. So where I looked below the line, you're now going to look above the line, but you need to just write it as an inequality. 1 minute. Okay, to help you, this point here is -4. Okay, so Mitchell, your answer must be an inequality. I'm going to give you guys 1 more minute to come up with an answer for this one. It is a favorite question. It's an important question. Always gets asked from grade 10 right through to grade 12. So if you learn how to do these questions now, they'll become much easier. No problem, Mitchell. Okay, so let's look again. We've got our graph, our hyperbola. Over here, it is below the x-axis, which means it is smaller than 0. Here, the same thing happens. The graph is below the x-axis, so it is smaller than 0. Here, the graph is above the x-axis, it is greater than 0, and that's where we need to look. Okay, and so we've located the bits that we are interested in, and just remember that we said that x equal to 0 is an asymptote, so it is getting closer to x equal to 0, but it's not going to go past. So we need to bear it in mind when we write our answer. So we can say that x is going to be, or the graph h of x is going to be greater than 0, where x is greater than -4, but it needs to stop before 0, before where x is equal to 0. So we put that boundary in place and we say x must be smaller than 0. Okay, and that's why it's a 2-mark question, as opposed to the first one, which was 1 mark, because you'll get 2 marks for that. Okay, any questions about that? Right. Now we're going to do, for 6.4, determine the equation of p of x if p of x is h of x plus 3. So p of x is this new graph that basically happens when you take h of x and you add 3 to it. So h of x is -4 over x minus 1, and then you add 3 to it. So a really easy 1 mark that you can get here for +2. So you just take the equation and you add 3 to it. Okay. Right. This one you're going to have to do there where you are for the next, let's say, 3 minutes. It says, draw the equation of p of x. Indicate all asymptotes and intercepts. So here's p of x. You've got the equation. Take 3 minutes and draw your graph. We'll check back in at 18:36. You don't need the rest of the question for this. You can just draw from p of x equal to -4 over x plus 2. Actually, if you want to be smart or quick about it, you can use the existing graph actually. Because the existing graph is just, so p of x is just the existing graph shifted 3 units up. So you can do it really quickly if you just work off the graph, or you can go x-intercepts, y-intercepts, asymptotes, shape, etc. Okay, so if you drew the graph, you can start by putting your asymptote in and then deciding which quadrants you're going to draw in. Because this graph is already there, we can use that as well as a guide, but otherwise you can do it from scratch. But you're basically going to, because it's a negative 4 over x, you're going to draw in these two quadrants, same as the original. Yeah, so our asymptote is y equals to 2, and we are going to do our x-intercepts by making y equal to 0. We take the plus 2 over to the other side, that's a minus 2, and then times by x on both sides to get minus 2x is equal to minus 4, and then x is equal to 2. So the graph will go through the x-axis at 2. So also just remember to draw in your other asymptote, which is x equal to 0. And then we're going to do our y-intercept, which is not going to exist because x can't equal to 0. So you don't even have to do that work. You can just do your one part of the graph where it goes through x equal to 2, and then the other part in the other quadrant. Okay, so if this was, it says it's got 6 marks here, so you got to do your asymptotes. Maybe there's 2 for asymptotes. There's definitely 1 for quadrants. There's definitely a mark for x-intercepts, and maybe there's 2 marks for x-intercepts actually. And where would the other 2 marks be? Maybe for shape. So yeah, that would be your 6 marks. Except I now have 7. So let's take that one away. Alrighty. Okay, I think that's all we have time for this evening.